Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Dan Hepworth. He is a student at Duke and the founder and CEO of the Massapequa Tutor. Good afternoon, Dan.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. How you doing today?
Doing all right, hanging in there during these trying times.
Yeah, I can imagine. So can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm from Massapequa Park, which is a suburb on Long Island, about an hour from New York City. Currently a sophomore at Duke, majoring in computer science, minoring in finance. In 2016, when I was a high school junior, I started a company called the Massapequa Tutor, which is a peer tutoring company that now has about 35 tutors and around 300 clients, primarily on Long Island. And also, as of yesterday, I launched a company with two peers called Student Side, which is to help connect high school students with college students better. So those are my main two entrepreneurial experiences, which I spend a lot of time on outside of school.
Wow, that's all. And you're probably what, 20 years old, 21?
19.
19, and you already got two companies. That's impressive. So what has been your experience with remote employment?
Yeah, it's been huge as of the last month. So in particular with the Massapequa Tutor, we've had to make everything virtual. Prior to March, a lot of our sessions were in person. So it was a big transition to, make the decision that all of our sessions would be hosted virtually, but then also create the infrastructure for such to actually happen. So we use this program called Big Blue Button, which is a learning interface. So it's kind of like Zoom, but there's a couple of other neat features like a whiteboard feature, the ability to raise your hand and ask questions, the ability to poll people in a group, a couple of more classroom-oriented features, and it's completely free. It's open source, so pretty much we just had to pay for the hosting, and we're able to integrate that seamlessly into our site, and it's accessible via virtual.themassapequatutor.com. So it's very in sync with everything. So that was a big adjustment. Given that our leadership team is usually scattered, so we have one person in Utah doing our technology, one person in New York City doing our marketing, and then myself and one of my colleagues on Long Island. A lot of our meetings are done virtually to begin with, so that wasn't a huge hurdle. And given that we just started student side right now, and we've been ideating that over the last month or so, a lot of our meetings have been virtual, and we're pretty fortunate that there's not anything that really has to be done in person that's critical. So we've been adjusting to the best of our ability.
Well, that's great. And speaking as an industry veteran, I hope that you never have to experience the regimen of going into an office every day and dealing with traffic. Obviously, you're going to have to go into an office from time to time, but maybe in your lifetime that will seem like, oh my God, people used to go into the office every day.
Yeah, that'll be crazy what happens post-COVID in terms of, I guess, the culture around working from home and normalizing that.
Yes. So give me your perspective. What do you think is the future of remote employment? And I mean, obviously Blue Button is something that's helped, Big Blue Button. What do you think can be done differently to make it even more effective?
I think definitely normalizing it more and creating more systems and processes to make it less of this weird alternative that you have to do when there's a pandemic to something that can be done in a lot more substitutable of a manner. So for example, if someone's I don't know, if they have a cold, but they're not super sick, that they're incapacitated to work, then they can, take the day off to not infect their peers and work from home. I think that, after the whole coronavirus thing settles, it'll be a lot more normalized, and there'll be a big culture change into how we view online, not only online working, but online learning in particular. It's kind of crazy that it took a pandemic to accelerate that development in classrooms when, I'm taking, online classes right now at Duke, and obviously there's some inconveniences, but there's online office hours, there's pre-recorded lectures. I would even argue that online learning gives the student even more flexibility to do what they want when they want, and thus learn more effectively.
Well, since you brought it up, what do you think is the future of online learning? Since that's a whole, I mean, and you've got whole different age groups. You've got, pre-K, you've got elementary, you got high school, college, and then you have adult education.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very seamless for the older ages, so that there's already online degrees out there. I imagine those will be a lot more common, where schools will offer online classes for the summer, and those will become a lot more prevalent. I think the key thing will be making that more viable for younger ages, because I imagine it's very difficult to engage a preschooler or a kindergartner through a screen. And I think that at an early age, a lot of what school is kind of social interaction and kind of socializing and getting adjusted to what people are like and developing social norms. So I think there's somewhat of an importance of having that in-person element at a young age. But I think there's a lot that can be done that's already being done to make the learning possible. Like there's already websites that do a lot of young age learning. Like there's Khan Academy, there's like ABC Mouse, there's a lot of sites. Making those more prevalent and making those more engaging and keeping it at a low cost, I think will be the key steps to developing that trend.
Yeah, that sounds true. I think you get that right on. So tell me the story behind your two startups, both the Massapequa Tutor and Student Side.
Yeah, so I'll start with TMT, or the Massapequa Tutor. So I started that in 2016 when I was a high school junior. From very humble beginnings, it was just myself as a high school junior. One day, I got a call on my house phone from a friend of a family friend. They were like, "Hey, we know your son Dan's a smart kid. Can he tutor my daughter in geometry?" And initially, I was pretty hesitant. I'm not a very outgoing person, so going to a stranger's home and teaching them something on a one-on-one setting seemed rather daunting initially. But I decided to give it a shot, since a lot of what I did in school was very instructional in nature. So I was a captain on the debate team, instructing underclassmen how to debate competitively. I was a volunteer tutor, a peer tutor in school, and generally I was that guy in homeroom that people can go to for questions, and I enjoyed that role. So I decided to give it a shot, and it was really the best decision I ever made. From that one interaction with a client, they referred me to a great deal of people, and they sort of gave me the momentum to then start proactively finding clients myself with initially what was just a Facebook and an Instagram page that I managed myself with like clip art. It was really gross. It was just like myself typing like, "Oh, I'm a tutor. I go to Chaminade and I have a good average." But then it developed into a lot bigger of a thing. Fast forward to my senior year, spring of 2018, I got to the point where I was working 8 to 9 hours a day in a library without time for lunch or dinner, literally eating granola bars and Cliff bars in between and during sessions. And I was like, shoot, I should really bring some other people on. So I did just that. I brought some peers on to help me out as tutors. And then coming to college in the fall of 2018, it was really a dilemma where I had about probably 75, 50 clients that depended on myself and a few of my colleagues. And we were all high school seniors going to college. So we didn't want to leave them hanging. So I sort of realized at college that I was obliged to my clients to make them, make sure that they can be taken care of. So I started recruiting people who were high school seniors from my high school at the time, and they started tutoring. And at the beginning of the fall, it started off very informally. It was like 2 or 3 of us. We had an iMessage group chat for all of our, business communication. All of the payment was through my personal Venmo. And then it quickly developed into a lot more than that, where, now we have a formal business LLC. We have a company PayPal. We have about 35 tutors now, about 300 clients. And the key thing that sets us apart is we're all peer tutors. So our team is primarily high school juniors, high school seniors. We do K through 12 subject tutoring, as well as SAT and ACT prep, and focus on those. And we try and be as flexible and relatable as possible, since we think there's a lot of benefit from working with someone that's not only your age, but someone who has taken the same classes as you with the same teachers. The story behind college Student Side is a bit more recent, reflecting on my college admissions process. I got into a very good school. Obviously, Duke is great, but it was a very difficult decision to make. And looking back, it was a rather naive quality decision. So I was between 3 schools. I was between Duke, the University of Virginia, and Georgetown. And how I decided between those 3 was pretty much that Duke was the highest ranked on U.S. News, and therefore it is the school I will go to. Like I didn't care about anything else. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't, go to any admitted students events. I was like, Duke is the highest on U.S. News, and therefore I'm going to put my deposit down. And obviously, very great to have that choice. Not many people have that choice, but I often question whether I made the right decision, or if my decision would have changed if I had more information in my hands. And, I sort of realized that Duke is not the school for everyone. There's a lot of, imperfections about it. I've even contemplated transferring multiple times, ultimately decided to stick with it due to some great people I've encountered. But I think a lot of people make very poor quality decisions on their schools and default to things like prestige and, having a beautiful campus. And so my mission is pretty much to better connect high school students with college students to make better quality decisions and have a network of mentors at all schools across the nation. So if someone in my shoes 2 years back was deciding between Duke, UV, and Georgetown, they would have the ability to talk with students at all 3 of those schools, hopefully students at those schools that have their interests. So, a comp sci student, for example, at all 3 of those schools, to get an insight as to what their computer science program is like. So that's sort of the motivation behind Student Side. And right now we're focusing on building that robust team of mentors across the nation.
Very interesting. That's actually a very good idea. I know both my kids went through similar things. And my daughter was choosing between UCLA, Boston University, and Berkeley.
Yeah, all great choices.
Yeah, all very good schools.
Schools.
But it's funny, she ended up going to UCLA, and then after about a year, and a phenomenal school, trust me, she decided to change masters or not careers, studies, and she ended up switching to NYU, not too far from you.
Yeah,
And
it's a
now,
big change.
yeah, and then she eventually got her master's from Carnegie Mellon, also not too far from you.
Mhm.
So, and just on another note, because you're new to this, pretty new to this, there's companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups, and you're just going into this world. Have you given any thought to using services like this to help you build these two companies?
Yeah, no, certainly. That's definitely something we look into since during these times it's very difficult to find engineers as you're competing with Google and Amazon and Apple and all those companies that
Mm.
pay a lot more than I can as a broke college student. Um, and then also, due to our conversation about remote learning, it's not as necessary now to have an engineer sit next to you and like drawing wireframes together. Like you can do a lot of that remotely and
Hmm.
on sort of a contract basis and on a part-time basis, and it's very possible to outsource stuff now. And I think it's even beneficial to do that sometimes, to get outside perspectives rather than bring someone on full time who you're sort of stuck with for a longer time commitment. So I think that tools like Gaper are definitely critical nowadays, and they also help the whole entrepreneurship community by decreasing the cost and increasing the accessibility of building MVPs and products.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you realize that when you first start out in these companies, you go to your network of friends and your local community. But you after a while, I don't know that you're ready for that service yet. But after a while, that's when you start looking at the Gapers, right?
Yeah, certainly.
I'm assuming all of your co-founders are friends from either high school or college, correct?
Yeah, so for student side, one of my co-founders is a freshman at Duke. We got acquainted through Duke's Student Founders Program,
Hmm.
and one of our other co-founders is at Cornell. We go back from high school. We did debate competitively. He was actually at another high school, and we were pretty much rivals. So we actually competed together in this like group team event. But we got to know each other through debate competitively, and I reached out to him since he has a technical background, and he seemed really interested in the project, and been working at it ever since.
Cool. That sounds great. So, Dan, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been very enlightening, and I wish lots of luck to both the Massapequa Tutor and student side, which you said it just started yesterday.
Yep, just yesterday, and we already have over 100 college students who signed up to become mentors.
Oh my God. So it sounds like it's going to be a successful company. Well, that's great. So I wish you luck and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for having me.
You're welcome.